The cameras were already rolling before he even walked onto the stage. The hall glistened under the weight of chandeliers and floodlights, buzzing with the chatter of journalists, political insiders, and ordinary citizens who had managed to grab seats for what had been billed as a light-hearted roast. But this wasn't comedy night at a club. This was politics, wrapped in theater, framed by spectacle. The senator strutted in like a seasoned actor taking center stage. He wore the kind of smile that wasn't really a smile at all. It was a smirk, the kind that said, "I've already won, and you don't even know it yet." The crowd clapped, but even in those opening seconds you could sense a split. Half of them clapped out of expectation, the other half because they were waiting to see if this politician would stumble as so many before him had under the glare of too many cameras. And then the microphone crackled. His voice boomed. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here tonight to tell a few truths, have a little fun, and maybe, just maybe, remind my rival that politics isn't for the thin-skinned." The audience chuckled politely. It was the kind of opening line designed to disarm, to make people lean forward in their chairs, but woven inside it was arrogance, sharpened like a blade. He didn't waste time. The roast began. One-liners, jabs, little exaggerations meant to get the crowd roaring. And at first it worked. The cameras captured bursts of laughter, smirks from allies. Even the rival, seated just a few feet away, forced a tight smile as if to say, "I can take it." For the first 5 minutes, it seemed like harmless political theater. That's the trick with arrogance. At first, it hides itself inside confidence. But then it grows bolder. The senator leaned over the podium, gesturing with his hands like a conductor controlling the mood of the room. "And my opponent here," he sneered, pointing toward the rival, "likes to talk about integrity. Integrity. This is the same person who couldn't even manage to—" The punchline landed. Half the room laughed. The other half? Their laughter faltered. The rival's smile cracked for the first time, but it wasn't anger. It was restraint. And here's where things began to turn. You see, the power of a roast lies in balance. Tease too lightly, you look weak. Hit too hard, you look cruel. The senator didn't see that line. He bulldozed straight past it. One by one, the jokes got sharper, less playful, more pointed. Each line was no longer about exposing humor. It was about humiliation. And in politics, humiliation has a way of backfiring louder than applause. The cameras zoomed in. Social media live streams clipped every insult in real time. One person in the crowd whispered, "This isn't funny anymore." Another shifted uncomfortably in their seat. But the senator didn't notice. Or maybe he noticed and simply didn't care. Arrogance has a blinding effect. It convinces you that laughter equals approval, that silence equals weakness. And then it happened. The line. The one sentence that turned the air in the room from hot with laughter to ice cold with discomfort. He leaned into the mic, lowered his voice as if sharing a secret, and delivered a jab so personal, so venomous, that the room didn't laugh. It gasped. That sound, dozens of voices all sucking in breath at once, rang louder than any applause he had gotten that night. For the first time, the senator paused. His smirk wavered. You could almost see him thinking, "Wait, why didn't they laugh?" But it was too late. The damage was already done. The rival didn't respond, didn't shout, didn't storm off. Instead, they simply sat there, staring with a calm expression, the kind that speaks louder than words. "You've revealed more about yourself than you ever could about me." And the crowd shifted. Some folded their arms. Others exchanged glances, whispers spreading like sparks on dry grass. At that exact moment, phones across the hall lit up. People weren't just watching, they were recording, tweeting, posting. The internet was already feasting on the clip, replaying the line that had crossed every unspoken boundary. That's the danger of arrogance in the digital age. It is not just about the room you are standing in. It is about millions of rooms you will never step into, filled with people watching, judging, reacting. The senator tried to recover. He laughed at his own joke, trying to draw the audience back in. "Come on, folks, it's all in good fun." But fun had left the building. The rival didn't need to say a word. They didn't need to lift a finger, because the crowd itself was already shifting the balance of power. Here's the thing most politicians forget. A roast is theater, yes. But theater belongs to the audience, and once the audience decides you've gone too far, you've already lost. The silence grew heavier. Each attempt at humor landed flatter than the last. Nervous chuckles replaced belly laughs. The senator's smile looked more forced, more desperate. And the cameras, the cameras, captured every flicker of doubt crossing his face. The rival, meanwhile, sat still, poised, the embodiment of patience. And in that patience was power. The kind of power that doesn't roar but echoes. By the time the senator closed with a shaky thank you all, the applause was lukewarm at best. What had begun as a spectacle of dominance ended as a performance of collapse. But here's the part he didn't realize. This was only the beginning. Because outside that hall, beyond those chandeliers and stage lights, the world was already reacting. Clips spreading. Hashtags rising. Commentators sharpening their words. He thought the roast ended when he walked off stage. But the truth, it was just about to begin. And in that silence, caught on camera, broadcast to millions, history shifted. The senator walked off stage with the swagger of someone convinced the show had gone well. To him, the awkward pauses were just part of the rhythm. The muted claps, nothing more than tiredness from the crowd. He didn't hear what the cameras heard. He didn't see what the world saw. Because out there, on screens, in living rooms, across social media timelines, the moment was already mutating into something much bigger. Clips spread like wildfire. That one sentence, the one he thought would be a knockout punch, was being replayed in slow motion, dissected from every angle. Accounts posted side-by-side reactions, the rival's stoic calmness against his smirking cruelty. It wasn't a fair fight anymore. The narrative had already flipped. Inside the green room, aides tried to congratulate him. "You killed it," one said nervously, forcing a laugh. But the looks on their faces betrayed the truth. They'd checked their phones. They'd seen the tide turning. And that's when the whispers began. Not from his rivals, not from the press, from his own supporters. "Did you hear what he said? Man, that was too far. Yeah, I laughed at first, but then, nah, that wasn't it." Support erodes quietly, like sand slipping through fingers. And in politics, once cracks appear, they spread. Meanwhile, the rival, they hadn't spoken a single word yet. They didn't need to. The silence during that roast had already painted them as the grown-up in the room, the composed figure who let arrogance hang itself with its own rope. Commentators latched onto that silence. "Did you see how they didn't flinch? That takes strength." Others echoed. "Sometimes the most powerful response is no response." The narrative was writing itself. By midnight, hashtags were trending. Out of line. Roast gone wrong. Public backlash. Memes appeared within hours. Clips of the senator's smirk side by side with the rival's calm face. Captions reading, "Who really won this roast?" And then came the late-night shows. The very stage where the senator thought he was untouchable, the world of political theater turned against him. Hosts replayed the moment with disbelief, mimicking his arrogance, tearing apart his delivery, exposing the ugliness behind the humor. The punchline had landed all right, but not the way he had planned. The rival, on the other hand, became the unintentional star of the night. Their stillness, their patience, their refusal to engage in cheap shots, it was cinematic. Clips of them simply raising an eyebrow, folding their hands, staring with quiet confidence. Those images went viral. They became symbols of dignity standing firm against cruelty. That's the thing about power dynamics in public spaces. You can control your words, but you can't control the story people build around them. And the senator? He was losing control fast. The next morning, headlines were brutal. Roast crosses the line, Senator sparks outrage. From comedy to cruelty. Did he go too far? Rival triumphs without speaking a word. Each headline was another nail, hammered publicly, relentlessly. But the real blow wasn't the press. It was the people. In coffee shops, offices, classrooms, conversations turned toward the clip. "Did you see it?" became the question of the day. Opinions spilled fast. For every defender saying, "It was just a joke," there were 5 others saying, "No, that was ugly." Supporters tried to spin it. "Oh, everyone's too sensitive these days." But the more they pushed, the more isolated they sounded. Because deep down, the truth was plain. The senator's arrogance had revealed something bigger than a single insult. It revealed character. And character doesn't vanish when the cameras stop rolling. Meanwhile, the rival finally spoke. Not in anger, not in retaliation, but in a calm interview where they simply said, "I believe politics should be about ideas, not personal attacks. Last night was unfortunate, but I think the people watching know what matters most. Simple, direct, powerful." It was the kind of statement that didn't just respond, it elevated. While the senator scrambled, they stood taller by standing still, and the people noticed. Online, comments poured in. "This is how you handle arrogance, with grace." They didn't need to clap back. Their silence said it all. This is leadership. The rival became the story, not because of what they did, but because of what they didn't do. And sometimes, in the theater of politics, restraint plays louder than rage. The senator, meanwhile, felt the walls closing in. Every attempt to defend himself only dug the hole deeper. "It was just humor," he barked in an interview. "People are too sensitive." But the problem with that excuse is that it shifts blame. Instead of owning the mistake, he blamed the crowd, the public, the very people whose support he relied on. And nothing destroys trust faster than telling your audience it's their fault for not laughing. And so the backlash snowballed. Petitions called for apologies. Editorials demanded accountability. Even members of his own party began to distance themselves, issuing statements like, "We don't condone personal attacks. Our focus is on serving the people." Notice the careful wording? They didn't mention his name, but everyone knew. That's how political abandonment works. It starts with silence, then with vague statements, then with full-on disassociation. And the senator, once so smug, found himself isolated. But here's the deeper truth. What destroyed him wasn't just one bad line. It was the arrogance behind it. The belief that power shields you from consequence, that laughter is loyalty, that cruelty can pass as charm. And when that belief shatters, it doesn't just bruise, it collapses. The roast was over. The hall was empty. But the clip lived on, carried across millions of screens, etched into public memory. The senator thought he had won the night. Instead, he had written the script of his own downfall. And the rival? They hadn't even started yet, because what happened next would turn silence into strategy and backlash into momentum. The morning after the roast, the senator expected the usual routine. A few criticisms, maybe some spin work from his team, then back to business as usual. That was the playbook. Politicians survive gaffes all the time. But this wasn't a gaffe. This was arrogance, captured in high definition, replayed millions of times with no way to edit or soften the edges. By dawn, news outlets weren't just covering the clip, they were feasting on it. On one channel, analysts paused the moment frame by frame. "Look right there, the smirk disappears." That's the exact second he realized it wasn't landing. Another channel played it on loop, cutting between the crowd's silence and the rival's raised eyebrow, as if silence itself had become the punchline. Social media wasn't kinder, it was merciless. Memes exploded faster than his staff could delete notifications. A side-by-side GIF went viral, the senator delivering his joke, followed immediately by a tumbleweed rolling across a desert road. Another simply showed his smirk dissolving into confusion, captioned, "Confidence. Xe has stopped working." And then came the TikTok edits, remixes of the roast synced with dramatic sound effects, mock laugh tracks, and even ironic applause. Each clip stripped away the authority he had carefully cultivated, leaving behind only the image of a man undone by his own words. The public wasn't just laughing at him, they were united against him. Hashtags kept climbing. Roast fail. Arrogance exposed. Epic backlash. Each tag gathered stories of people sharing the clip at school, at work, at family dinners. It wasn't just politics anymore. It was entertainment. It was culture. It was conversation. And here's the danger in politics. Once your mistake becomes relatable comedy, It's over. Because comedy spreads faster than facts, and laughter is a currency that no spin doctor can buy back. Inside his office, panic grew. Advisors debated damage control strategies. "We need a formal apology," one insisted. No, that makes him look weak," another countered. "We double down, call it satire, frame it as freedom of speech." But while they argued, the rival seized the silence. They didn't issue attacks or insults. Instead, they released a short, carefully worded statement. "Last night's remarks were disappointing. Our nation deserves leaders who debate ideas, not demean individuals. I won't engage in name-calling because the people I serve expect better. Let's focus on solutions." It wasn't flashy, it wasn't emotional, but it was devastatingly effective. Because in politics, when your opponent self-destructs, all you need to do is stand tall. And that's exactly what they did. Commentators praised the rivals' restraint. Editorials lauded their dignity. In an era of chaos, one headline read, "Calmness wins." Another declared, "The roast that made a leader." The backlash against the senator shifted into something deeper, something harder to recover from. It wasn't just about a bad line anymore. It was about character. The narrative crystallized. Arrogant man mocks, dignified rival rises. Crowds at town halls began bringing it up. "Do you regret what you said?" reporters asked relentlessly. Every time he tried to pivot, the question boomeranged back. Clips of him stumbling through justifications added fuel to the fire. "I was just joking," he repeated. But the words rang hollow. Because here's the truth. Jokes are only funny if people laugh. And nobody was laughing anymore. Meanwhile, the rivals' campaign donations surged. Small donors, ordinary people, contributed in record numbers, writing notes like, "Thank you for staying calm. We need leaders like you." Finally, someone who doesn't take the bait. This wasn't just a meme war anymore. It was momentum. The senator's allies grew nervous. In interviews, they dodged questions. "We're focused on policy," they insisted, refusing to defend the roast. Some even privately criticized him, leaks slipping out to the press. He embarrassed all of us. The machine that once propped him up began to sputter, and then protests. Outside his office, crowds gathered, holding signs with phrases ripped straight from the viral moment. Who really won? Dignity, arrogance. Students staged mock debates parodying the roast. Late-night comedians dedicated entire segments to reenacting the silence, milking laughs at his expense. It was relentless. The rival, meanwhile, leaned into the role thrust upon them, not as a comedian, not as a fighter, but as the adult in the room. They gave speeches about unity, respect, and integrity. They framed the roast not as their victory, but as a reminder that politics should be bigger than insults. And people listened. Poll numbers shifted. Surveys showed a surge of approval for the rival. The senator's numbers dipped, not slightly, but dramatically. In 1 week, he went from untouchable to vulnerable. But the harshest blow came not from polls, not from protests, but from within his own party. Behind closed doors, leaders whispered, "Is he a liability? Can we still win with him?" Eventually, whispers became discussions. Discussions became strategy sessions. And strategy sessions became betrayal. He didn't know it yet, but the roast wasn't just a bad night. It was the beginning of the end. Because here's the reality. In politics, you don't fall when your enemies attack. You fall when your friends stop defending you. And one by one, his friends were vanishing. The rivals' momentum soared higher. Media outlets called them the symbol of restraint. Influencers quoted their calmness. Hashtags evolved into slogans. What began as backlash had become a movement. The senator? He was left clinging to excuses, shouting into microphones that no longer amplified his voice, but magnified his desperation. Each defense, each interview, each outburst made him look smaller. The roast was meant to belittle his rival. Instead, it belittled him. And now, the question was no longer, did he go too far? The question had become, can he survive this? The senator had weathered storms before. He thought this would be no different. But this wasn't just another storm. It was a hurricane. And he was standing at the center, stripped of cover, with no one left to shield him. The clip of his failed roast didn't fade. It lived on, replayed endlessly, referenced in every late-night joke, in every debate, in every corner of the internet. Months passed, but the wound refused to close. Every attempt he made to move forward was dragged back by the same 4 words. But what about the roast? His team tried rebranding. They drafted new talking points, arranged community visits, even staged photo opportunities of him shaking hands and smiling. But the problem wasn't his image. It was his character. And once the public turned on that, no amount of staged smiles could bring it back. The rival, on the other hand, grew stronger with each passing week. They didn't gloat. They didn't even mention the roast again. Instead, they carried themselves with steady confidence, reminding voters that dignity wasn't a weakness, it was leadership. They became a mirror of everything the senator wasn't, and the people noticed. By election season, the numbers weren't just unfavorable for the senator. They were catastrophic. His approval rating collapsed. Donors pulled out. Endorsements disappeared. He was left standing alone on debate stages, still trying to mock, still trying to jab. But every word he spoke was met with the ghost of his roast gone wrong. Because here's the truth. When arrogance becomes your brand, humility is the cure people crave. Then came the ultimate humiliation. On live television, during a major debate, a journalist asked him point blank, "Senator, many Americans still remember the roast incident. Do you regret it?" He stumbled, paused, laughed nervously. "It was just a joke," he muttered again. But the audience wasn't laughing. In fact, they groaned. Some even booed. The rival didn't need to speak. Their silence, steady, composed, spoke volumes. That was the moment it became undeniable. The roast hadn't just backfired. It had ended his career. When election night arrived, the results weren't close. Networks called the race early. The rival stood victorious, delivering a speech not of triumph but of service. "Tonight is not about me," they said. "It is about what we've learned, that politics doesn't have to be petty, that respect matters, that leadership means lifting people up, not tearing them down." The crowd erupted in cheers. Hashtags flooded again, but this time they weren't mocking. They were celebratory. Dignity wins. Respect over roasts. New era. Meanwhile, the senator sat in a quiet room, watching the numbers flash across the screen. Each county, each district slipping away. Allies who once cheered him were silent. Phones that once rang with congratulations were still. The roar of victory was happening, but it wasn't for him. And in that silence, perhaps for the first time, he realized the weight of his mistake. A smirk, a line meant to belittle, had rewritten his legacy. Because history is unforgiving. It doesn't remember all your speeches. It doesn't remember all your policies. Sometimes it remembers one moment, one look, one word, one misstep that defines everything else. For him, that moment was the roast. The rival, however, became more than a politician. They became a story, a symbol. The person who didn't fight arrogance with arrogance, but with composure. The one who showed that sometimes the most powerful mic drop is no mic drop at all. Years later, the roast is still studied. Political science classes analyze it as a turning point in modern politics. Commentators replay the clip when talking about the dangers of arrogance. Students laugh at memes that still circulate, not knowing the original context but recognizing the universal lesson. Hubris destroys, and that's the beauty and the cruelty of moments like these. They live forever. So what's the takeaway? That politics is theater, yes. That charisma matters, yes. But above all, that character shines through when the lights are brightest. You can't fake respect. You can't spin dignity. And when truth hits arrogance head-on, arrogance always cracks first. The senator thought he was roasting his rival. Instead, he roasted himself. And the public? They weren't just entertained. They were reminded of something bigger. That leadership is about building, not breaking. That words can wound, but silence can heal. That when arrogance backfires, it isn't just funny. It's a warning. So the next time a politician smirks, the next time they lean in with words meant to belittle, remember this story. Remember how quickly a moment can turn. Because in politics, you don't always lose in an election. Sometimes, you lose in a single sentence. And sometimes that one sentence is enough to end it all.